Cynthia Morey has never lost her childhood love of Spitfires and Hurricanes. As a 14-year-old, she watched them dogfighting over her home during the Battle of Britain in 1940. This is a story with a sad and a happy ending, a story beginning with a Hurricane reunion, the death of her brother in a Liberator bomber, and the chance coming together with another family who lost their brother and uncle in that same tragedy in March 1942.
I remember when 1940 came, standing in the back garden in Shirley with my mother, watching and cheering those Spitfires and Hurricanes up above when the Battle of Britain was in full spate. And of course at night we were in the air raid shelter, most nights, and that's how life was spent. Somehow it was exciting, and that took away the fear for me. It was the excitement of every day. What would happen now? Would they come tonight? Would there be a dogfight overhead? We didn't know. So that was quite exciting.
The excitement of seeing, hearing and smelling the fighter planes of 1940 is still with Cynthia, 74 years on. She makes regular visits to watch this lovingly and accurately restored Hurricane Mark I, the same plane that she watched in the skies above in 1940. It belongs to Peter Vasher, who has flown in to welcome both Cynthia and Tony, and also his beloved Hurricane.
My brother then was on active service, and he was flying Wellingtons stationed at Alconbury in Cambridgeshire. And of course we worried all the time about that. But we went to see Target for the Night, that wonderful documentary which showed a Wellington bomber flying over Germany. And of course they all got back safely, and we thought, well, it's going to be all right. I know, he'll be okay. But he volunteered in, let me see, where would that be? 1941, about the autumn, for service in the Middle East. And he went out to join 108 Squadron at Cabrit. And they were flying Wellingtons, and he was on bombing missions. And we still worried a little about him, but we got lots of letters. He was awfully good about writing letters, and those aerograms, which were tiny little photographed copies that we got, heavily censored, of course. So life went on. I enjoyed Leamington College extremely well. Then, one day, I was called home from school, and I saw my father standing on the doorstep. We lived in the first floor flat in a Regency building on the Parade in Leamington. And I thought, what's Daddy doing home this time of day? I mean, he never comes home till the evening as a rule. And I could see by his face there was something very, very wrong. And then he told me the telegram had come, the telegram that everybody dreaded throughout the war. It had come. The plane, which was a Liberator bomber, they had transferred to Liberators from Wellingtons, was actually coming home, and it was bringing crews to take other Liberators back to the Middle East. And there were 19 on board, and it ran into the most appalling weather. Halfway through the journey, it was suggested that they turn back because the weather ahead was going to be so appalling. And they took a vote from the crew, and everyone voted to go on. So sadly, they did. And as they went on, the weather became worse and worse. The radio packed up, and fuel was low. And finally, they crashed just in the mountains of Mourne, one could say.
In 2002, our family had not yet met Cynthia. It would be another 10 years before we did so.
Dad's brother, our Uncle John, died in Southern Ireland's worst ever air crash. A British Liberator bomber crashed in mountains near Jenkinstown on the 16th of March 1942. Of the 19 men on board, only 4 survived the crash. Dad, Robert, Ann and I went to see some of the people exactly 60 years and 3 months later. Uncle John, like all his comrades, was just a boy when he was killed.
He was my middle brother.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think all that lot were the crew.
Yes.
The others were passengers coming back to pick up more of these planes liberated from this country.
Then when we started to find, we found little bits of gauges, we found a lot of stuff. We found a lot of small things that we know exactly where the plane is. And the landing gear is still there, the tricycle landing gear. We had kind of differences over that. You wanted to take it down and
no, I never wanted to take
George
that down.
did.
Yeah.
I didn't want to leave. We wanted to leave something on the mountain. The plaque that we had intended to put up, I just done a carving on a piece of timber, I can show you it, of a Liberator, and underneath I was going to have all the victims' names and the survivors and their rank and as much as we could get about them, and a little bit about the Liberator. But that's the 19 of them.
Yeah.
And these are the survivors. One man they didn't find till the following morning, they found him under the wing. He was only 19, he was the youngest man.
Yeah. I was out on the next day on my bicycle, which was a bank holiday St. Patrick's Day, and early, and we went up to the scene where the fog had cleared and it was possible to see. And in fact, there were only a few people there at the time. There was a police sergeant and a few others. When a few more came, he said, look, way in under the wing one can see, I think he shone a torch, a boot, sole of a boot. And he said, I think there's enough now to give the wing a lift, which we did. And there was a body attached to the boat.
Going to be extremely wet. I don't know whether you'll make it. I don't know how. It's a very heavy climb, and after so much rain, even in the dry weather, the plane actually crashed in a bog. It's that sort. There's a bog on top of the mountain. In fact, even a little bit further up, there's a lake on the top of it. So it's very, very heavy going.
We knew the plane, we couldn't see it, but we thought it was going to come down on top of it on the road. And we nearly lost our lives. And then we thought it was going to hit the church spire, but it didn't. It went on again.
He was climbing hard, all right, but he came to 2 outcrops on the mountain, and we've since measured the outcrops, and they're less than 100 foot apart. And an awful lot of rocks are dislodged on one side, where it looks very, very like as if one of the wing tips, and maybe even an engine, hit that outcrop. And the plane then was on a plateau, very, very soft ground, and it ploughed across it for about 300 or 400 yards, I'd say, and then it collided with a rock. Now, had he been able to get another 20 or 30 foot, he would have cleared that. The only problem was there was another mountain behind, a half a mile away or a mile away, that he possibly wouldn't have cleared it anyway. There were just 2 little hillocks, and they were too narrow. Now, there's no saying he was coming in the centre of them, but he might have been. And when he hit, he had no chance then of getting up any higher.
It was like a valley. He actually flew up the valley on the mountain.
Exactly.
As you said, the 2 outcrops. One of the wings was torn off.
Yeah.
It was probably the port wing.
Yeah.
Completely from the fuselage.
Yeah.
And we did examine the rock, and it is cracked, etc., which would support that, you know.
Steve Challen was a 20-year-old gunner who should have been on board. He found himself bumped off flight AL577 at the last moment by someone itching to get out of Egypt.
I was supposed to be on it, and so the clever fellow, I'm going, not you.
Steve now lives in North Yorkshire with his horrific memories of what could have been.
Another 20 feet elevation and we would have crossed the mountain.
But then on the far side of that, we have another mountain it's much higher. Slieve, McLaughlin, Carlingford. Sorry, Slieve, Foy and Carlingford. They probably would have made that one. Yeah. Unless they turn slightly to the right, where the mountain range is much lower. They would have passed it.
We gather together at the closest we can get to the crash site, adjacent to Mullahatting Forest. Slieve na Glogh, or Mountain of the Stones, is just a mile away.
Slieve na Glogh, and about a half a mile the far side of the highest point on that flat piece was the area where the plane actually came down and the flight ceased.
Flying this way?
Coming this way.
Right.
This is a northerly direction.
Yes.
They had come, as you know, from Dundalk and came out to Blorgan and turned in the north direction to come this way.
Right.
To try and get to Northern Ireland as quickly as possible.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah.
But they almost made it. They fell short by about 20 feet.
Incredible.
On their climb.
And it's really, how far the other side of the...
It's about a half a mile the other side
of
the top of that.
Yeah.
That's it.
In 2012, a programme on local radio connected the Morey and Tolson families. We felt we knew Paul, Cynthia's brother, as she learnt too about our Uncle John. In an effort to complete the story, to understand something of the enormity of this crash, we decided to visit the Imperial War Museum at Duxford, where we were privileged to be shown around a Liberator bomber.
This actually saw service with a research body from within the United States Air Force, and it was taken out of service in the 90s.
As far as I know. It was a ferry flight, you see.
They wouldn't have for ferrying flights. They wouldn't have had to adopt a full crew.
No, they've had a gunner or a couple, wouldn't
it would
they?
have been sufficient crew. Try and get the leg in.
19 men are crammed aboard flight AL577 to return home to train up Liberator crews. They will start ferrying out more planes to bolster the Middle East bombing effort based in the Egyptian desert.
It's immensely poignant to be sitting, perhaps not in the seat that John was sitting in. He was probably the co-pilot on the flight that crashed in Ireland. But to see this horribly cramped space, you can barely see over the top. And a tragedy that John and
Paul
lost their lives on that same flight. And we didn't know Cynthia then, and we've only met up with Cynthia in the last few months.
I'm so pleased.
It's quite amazing, almost a happy coincidence.
But happiness after sadness.
Yes.
Because my poor brother must have been way down underneath as navigator.
Yes.